You are watching Hillsborough Television, programming that keeps you informed about the services and activities of your county government.
Welcome to Beyond Today, the program that addresses the future of our community through conversations with people who are working today for a better tomorrow. I'm Ray Shermonte, your host for Beyond Today and Assistant Executive Director for the Hillsborough County City-County Planning Commission. In our last program, we talked with Michael M. English, five-time chairman of the Hillsborough County City-County Planning Commission, who recently announced his resignation. In the next two shows, we want to talk with some other planning commissioners. You know that these are citizens of your community, and it's interesting to know why they got involved in their community and the Planning Commission. We'll talk first with Planning Commissioner Christine Malzone of Port Tampa City. Christine, thank you for being on the show. I wanted to kind of have our audience get to know you a little bit and what your background is in Tampa, how long you've been here, where you've lived, and just your personal experiences with Tampa.
Well, I'm nearly a native. My family moved to Tampa when I was 2, and I grew up in Tampa and lived in different parts of Tampa. Lived in the Seminole Heights area, Wellswood area, Sunset Park area, and now live in Port Tampa.
So you've kind of covered the city from north to south.
Yes, and I have a view of the different lifestyles, the different types of housing that are in those areas, and the pros and cons of the different neighborhoods, I suppose.
Now, have you ever lived outside of the city limits of Tampa, or have you always lived in Tampa?
Yes, I have. Right after high school, I left Tampa to work and to go to school, and I lived in Chicago and into New York City, and then Miami and Los Angeles before returning to Tampa.
Now that was during your college years?
College and working.
Okay.
I was away for about 12 years.
Oh, that's quite a while.
Yes.
That's good. That gives you some experiences with what goes on
You see
in
how
other
other people
cities.
live.
Exactly. And now you're back here in Tampa, which
Yes.
is good. Now, how did you get involved with the Planning Commission? I mean, I don't normally think that's something somebody suddenly decides they want to be a planning commissioner.
No, you don't. Like many things that happen to you in your life, I believe it's an evolutionary process. You know, growing up in Tampa, I had very strong feelings about my community, was very proud of my community. And then traveling to different cities, I always thought of Tampa as my home, even though I lived in some of these cities for as long as 5 years. And you see how some of the other communities do things, how they solve their problems, how they address issues. And when I came back to Tampa, when I first moved back, I lived in Carrollwood Village, and that was in the late 70s. And at that time, it was really a lovely place. You know, there weren't too many things past the entrance to Carrollwood Village at that time. And it was sort of a suburban, rural atmosphere. And coming from LA, I really enjoyed that. It was, you know, quite a difference, but I really enjoyed it. But then as time went on and the traffic increased and the building increased, I wanted to live closer to where I work. I work in West Tampa, which is an old neighborhood in Tampa. So I like older homes, historic homes, so I looked in those different areas and I found Port Tampa. And it's a very unique area. And I got involved with the Civic Association there. It was really my first home that I can consider my first home with a yard. It wasn't a condominium or an apartment. And I started to care more about the neighborhood around me. and care about the people in that neighborhood. And there were certain things that happened that I got involved in and was part of a team working to solve certain issues. And it's sort of, it's a bug, you know, that bites you, and then you feel like you can make a change and you can make a difference and make things better, and you just want to do more.
Now, when you found Port Tampa, were you aware of its existence before? I guess you were, being from Tampa, but how much?
I am ashamed. I am ashamed to say I lived in Sunset Park, which is maybe 3 miles or 4 miles north of Port Tampa, and I did not know Port Tampa existed. I had not been to Port Tampa before I went there to look at a home that I had seen in one of the realtor's books.
So this was kind of a new experience, realizing there's a historic neighborhood just 3 miles from where you live.
Yes, and it was the feel of the neighborhood. It reminded me of when I was a kid. It reminded me of when I was growing up, and the houses facing the street, and the tree canopy and the brick streets and the community feeling of it. It gives you a very warm feeling just being there.
I think it's interesting that you would say that, because there's this whole movement now called the New Urbanism, which captures some of those feelings, and that's what you hear a lot of people our age talk about, baby boomers, that they, you know, miss their childhood.
Want to recapture their childhood.
Right, and I think that's why this movement has been gaining some popularity, both in restoring older houses and in newer neighborhoods.
Yes. I live in an older house. My house was built in 1896.
Wow, that's probably definitely one of the oldest houses in Hillsborough County.
Yeah.
Is it on the historic register?
No, it's not on the historic registry. There were some modifications made to it, so it does not meet the standards.
The strict guidelines,
Yeah.
but it's still historic.
Yes.
That must be very interesting to live in a house that old. I imagine it offers a number of problems. Anytime you're gentrifying or fixing up an older neighborhood, I guess you run into a lot of issues about preserving the older homes.
Yes, you do, because you don't really want to restrict people from doing what they want with their own personal property. You know, families get bigger, their needs change, they want to expand, and our neighborhood is not in favor of strict guidelines. We would like to have a certain approach to any new construction, that it be in keeping with the flavor of the neighborhood. But we really feel uncomfortable trying to enforce any strict guidelines on someone else.
Now, you stated you were involved with the Civic Association,
Yes.
and that's how you came to be a planning commissioner. How exactly did that happen?
Well, I had been involved with the Civic Association on some of their fundraising things, on the Promenade Port Tampa that we have in Port Tampa City every first Sunday in December. It's a tour of our homes, and since mine was an older home, I had participated in that. And I lived next door to an older home, and that home caught on fire. And I had tried unsuccessfully for months ahead of time to have the home either condemned or something done to it, knowing that it was a fire hazard. So it was sort of became an issue, code enforcement issue in the area, and got involved on that level. And then we had an issue that or emulsion that brought to our attention the number of trucks that we have in our neighborhood that travel directly through our residential street of Interbay. We have 800 trucks a day on Interbay and over 700 trucks a day on West Shore that converge on Commerce. So we have 1,500 trucks. I'm talking about oil tanker trucks, large hauling trucks, every day. And I got involved in that issue, the ore emulsion issue, because of the traffic issue. And saw a need for planning. I mean, this truck issue didn't happen all at once in Port Tampa City. It grew. It was, you know, maybe it was 500 trucks, and then another company came in and added another 100 trucks, and then there was another company came into the port, and it just grew upon us until it was out of control. And I believe it's very important for our neighborhood, because we still have a lot of vacant property in our neighborhood that's been unimproved, for us to have a plan of what we see for the future of our neighborhood. And that's how I got involved in planning, first on a neighborhood level with the Port Tampa City Planning Board, which Planning Commission staff has been helping us do a neighborhood plan and has been wonderful in facilitating
I wanted
that
to ask you a little
process.
bit about that. We just have a few minutes, but what is your, I guess, vision for Port Tampa in the future? What do you want it to be?
We want to return to our past for our future. We want the traditional neighborhood that we had in the past. We would like to expand the road system to what was platted originally along the same lines, the grid system. We would like to get back to our own little community commercial area where we could have the services that the neighborhood needs supplied right there in the neighborhood. We are very much in favor of the trains and want a commuter rail system, which we had at one time in Port Tampa. So we want, for our future, we want to return to the traditions of the past.
That's interesting. A lot of people forget that actually Port Tampa was connected with downtown by rail at one time, and it was successful. When people say there's not enough people here, it was really a much smaller city, and it worked then.
Yes.
So I'm sure it can work now. That's a good point. Well, just on a bigger picture, since you have to deal with issues that cover all of Hillsborough County, what is your, I guess, vision for Hillsborough County and Tampa in the future? What type of metropolitan area do you want to see us be?
Well, I would like to see the urban areas, the urban neighborhoods of Tampa redeveloped and developed on an urban scale. I would like to see a rail connection throughout Tampa, commuter rail. I would like to see the slowing down of our suburbs and have more infill building in areas that are partially developed. I think we are losing some of our rural or agricultural areas that we can never regain again. This is not a renewable resource. And I would like to see Tampa concentrate at its center and fill in on its outskirts and retain the rural aspects of the outer parts of Hillsborough County.
So you definitely, I guess, want to see Hillsborough County retain different lifestyles.
Oh,
where
absolutely.
You have
I think that's
rural.
something wonderful about this area is you can live in a really urban area. You can live in a high-rise on Bayshore Boulevard and be in the city of Tampa. You can live in Port Tampa City and live in an old historic house, and you can live in a rural area that's farmland and still be in Hillsborough County, and still be close to facilities and entertainment and all the pluses of an urban area.
I think often, and it's interesting that you said you lived in other cities, sometimes when you go away and come back you realize the assets that we have here.
And one of those assets is our rural area. You know, I lived in LA, which is, you know, totally developed from Los Angeles to San Diego. And to be able to drive out of the city, maybe 15, 20 minutes out of the city and be in the middle of farmland or pastureland or groveland is wonderful, and it's a beautiful resource that we have, and we really have to be very careful with it.
I think you're right. You can't go back, as you said.
No.
Once it changes, that's it. Well, I'd like to thank you for being on the show. When we return, we'll talk to Dooley Hotelling Planning Commissioner from South Hillsborough County. Welcome back to Beyond Today. We're talking with Planning Commissioner Dooley Hotelling. Dooley, I want to congratulate you on being named Agriculturist of the Year. That's kind of an exciting honor. And that brings me to some questions I have, I guess, about your background and how long you've been in Hillsborough County and what your experiences have been. If you could tell us a little bit about that.
Gee, I guess, Ray, the family came here in the late 1800s. And I was here until I decided to go to the university. Spent a couple of years here in Tampa. Actually lived inside Tampa during that time. Project part of the time. Sometime in Oklahoma, etc. But the family was an agricultural family since go. Still tends to be, it turns out.
So your family owned property in South Hillsborough County then?
Yes, have
Since the late 1800s?
something over a century.
That's impressive. That's kind of a rare thing when we have so many non-natives.
They're a vanishing breed.
Yeah, definitely. So you said you went to the University of Tampa? Was that the school that you were? Okay.
First couple of years. Tulsa.
So you got experience living in a city then also?
Yes, Tampa, Tulsa, Idaho Falls,
Okay.
Washington, D.C.
Now,
Well,
you didn't
near
become I'm going to use the word farmer, I guess, if that's appropriate. I don't know if it is, but before you came back, I guess you had some other career
Yeah, I didn't finish
experiences.
high school, Ray. I spent 7 years farming and decided that was no way to earn a living. Spent 4 years in college and was a mathematician, physicist, engineering for 25 years. My father had a serious heart attack in the mid-60s. I finally had to get involved and ended up moving back and making a business of a little 30-acre grove.
So you kind of, I guess, rethought your feelings about agriculture?
It appeared that it had possibilities, and I was able to find an employer here, a consultant, but live here and work for 10 years while we built a business.
Okay, so you worked in a job in mathematics or that?
Yeah,
area of
actually
your
as a
experience?
consultant at the time, nuclear engineering,
Okay.
power technology.
That's an interesting combination. I'm sure not many of the people in Hillsborough County involved in agriculture also have your other background.
Believe it or not, it sort of ties together in a sense, Ray. The last 10 years I almost had a little chunk of business all of my own. The company allowed me to run it. It was perfect prep for what we've done on the farm. My wife and I got it started. A couple of youngsters got involved. Now the youngsters running it.
That's great. So it's still thriving then?
Yes, I would say it's healthy.
Which I guess is a big question. South Hillsborough County has a lot of agriculture. Is that something you see that needs to be preserved in that area?
That comes to your early comment about whether one would call me a farmer. We decided never, ever again when I left the farm to grow tomatoes. And when we came back, it was expectation that never, ever would we sell commodity products on the market. At the present moment, they won't pay their production costs. Today, I would say we reached the point 95% of our product is retail and the value added after we grow it. It's the way to survive.
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess explain a little bit about what you mean when you say value added for our audience. I'm not sure they would understand.
If you grow the product, oranges worth 2 or 3 or 4 cents a pound. When we sell them in the retail store in a bag, they're worth 15 or 20 cents a pound. If we put them in an inexpensive shipping carton and move them somewhere in the U.S., they might be 60 to 90 cents a pound. If I move them to Europe, they're $2 a pound. That's the difference.
So you're basically adding a service almost to it, where like people might order oranges for their relatives up north, something like that.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that is an interesting way to look at it. I'm not sure people think of agriculture in those terms, but
The agriculturists are looking at it more and more that way.
so that is more and more common, as you would call value added.
Yes.
Now, I know we have some growth problems and you're on the Planning Commission, but I'd like to know exactly how you ended up on the Planning Commission.
Ray, in Idaho, we were concerned with nuclear safety technology, but a substantial part of our activity was trying to get out of imaginary crystal balls and understand what the future had to be and how to get there. And I had 10 years experience that pretty much led right into where I am now. It's a fascinating parallel in a lot of ways.
So I guess you're talking about planning for things of that nature really is related.
Yeah. When I hit 65, hey, it's time to slow down and give a little back to the community, and this looked like an interesting thing to do.
Now, you were involved, I believe, in some environmental issues in South Hillsborough County?
That too.
Right. I remember being aware of you before you were on the Planning Commission. Was there some river issues?
Cockroach Bay Aquatic
Cockroach
Management,
Bay, okay.
Preserve Management.
So you were involved in the planning to
Yes.
preserve Cockroach
Yes,
Bay?
and the National Estuaries Program, some other things.
Mm-hmm.
It is pretty significant, Ray. Those are the things that make this a good place to live. that
Is
we're
our
preserving.
environment, yes. Well, I want to talk a little bit, you got on the Planning Commission then, I guess your civic activities led you to be appointed to the Planning Commission, but what are some of the issues you think we're facing here? We're obviously going through growth and really becoming a different type of community. Where would you like to see us go, I guess?
I guess to begin, when I was growing up, it was an all-day trip from my grandfather's home to Tampa, an hour or two shopping and return. There were only a couple of 300,000 people in the county then. Now we're pushing 1 million. We're scattered all over this, and well, all over 4 counties here. People live and work in the Tampa-Bay area. I think that this needs to change substantially, and the sooner the better. But to come down to the bottom line, where I live, South County has about 30% of all the land area in the county, only about 10% of the population, but we're scheduled for some big-time growth in the next 10, 20 years. It really is the last part of this county that is open enough. It can be developed in some sort of a smart manner using well-planned algorithms and some really good planning. I'm very much concerned that that happened. There is just a tremendous potential there because we're right on Cockroach Bay, we're right on the river, and it's still only a few minutes away from Tampa, except in the rush hour.
I guess how far is it now? You said it used to be 2 hours when you were young. But,
when I was a youngster, it was all day for 2 hours shopping.
Oh, I see.
He would milk the cows, we would leave at daylight and return at or after dark. It was that big trip. Now it's about, well, let's see, it was 30 minutes. I always figured 15, 25 years ago that I would be on the causeway in 30 minutes from home. Now it's about 45 minutes from home downtown, and the present rate of growth, it's going to be well above an hour in 20 years.
Hopefully we won't go back to it taking all day, but I suppose if we don't look at our transportation, we might. I know you have some opinions on transportation in this county. Where do you see us needing to go to address that issue?
That's the second issue. We're moving toward the Atlanta scenario very rapidly. We need a lot of infill, a lot of more dense development, and that applies to the south part of the county too. But the auto just can never quite get us there, and Atlanta has demonstrated this more than enough. Our problem there is that we can't build the highways fast enough. We need other uses of that land. We must have other transport. And pursuant to that, I note that we spend almost $6 billion a year every year in this county to support our transportation needs, mostly automobiles. And I'm concerned that even a little bit of this sidetracked over a 20-year period, we wouldn't need that much of 20 years funding, just what we spend on automobiles to build a heck of a better system. It has to have other means of transit.
When you talk about the $6 billion expense, I assume you're talking about to build and maintain roads?
And buy our automobiles and maintain them, buy gasoline. And none of these things I've discussed counts the 60, 80 million man-hours a year we spend, people hours, sitting in our automobiles, getting up road rage. Be a lot more fun to sit somewhere in that bus or train and do some work or play. Even a few of those, a small percentage is a lot of hours.
Right. Well, I think most people, as you have, that have been to other cities possibly where transit existed, understand how it works. Unfortunately, I think some people probably haven't had that experience and are a little bit skeptical. But you don't feel that it's a choice where you have to totally give up your car? Isn't it really a balance? I
think even in Europe they spend close to 50% or a little more of their time, of their mileage in their automobiles. The problem is we're spending 90-odd%,
right,
almost 100% of our time in the automobile.
Well, I think the whole word, I guess, is balancing it, and we're probably a little bit off balance right now.
Exactly. The alternate means are just extremely useful for people who come and go every day, and the schedule just falls right in.
Now, which particular part of South County do you live in?
Far south as you can get, just south of Ruskin, about 3 miles. Okay. Right on the river.
There's a lot of discussion about Ruskin, I guess. What do you see Ruskin becoming in the future? I know it has a lot of potential.
Ruskin is scheduled to be probably a suburban area within 20 years. There will be a lot of light commercial and perhaps heavier commercial as we go a little east toward Route 75. Heavy commercial right on 75 perhaps.
Now, do you see it, I guess, becoming somewhat of a resort destination, or I hear ecotourism a lot. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
Just people who want to live close to those things and enjoy them.
Such as Tampa-Bay.
Yes, indeed.
Sometimes we forget that we do have communities on the bay other than Tampa.
Yes, indeed.
And Ruskin certainly is one of them.
And of course, there will be a lot of ag areas, we hope, just east of that, if you get out of the immediate South County active area.
Mm-hmm. Now, the agriculture, do you see it changing in the South County area? What's happening to agriculture?
Agriculture everywhere, Ray, is becoming more intensive as we look around the developed areas because the land is expensive and it's the only way one can support the cost of the land and the growing expenses. This has to continue, and I think it'll accelerate in South County.
Now, some of the agriculture, I guess it's in the more urban parts of South County, could actually over time move to the more rural areas, couldn't it?
It is very problematic, Ray. A lot of it is temperature sensitive, and as we move away from the coast, it gets colder. There is a problem there, and a lot of that property needs to be retained for agriculture. It'll get very expensive, but we'll find intensive uses for it, I'm certain.
Can you give us what are a couple of our biggest agricultural endeavors in Hillsborough County? I always hear tropical fish. Is that correct? That it's one of the biggest?
I would say probably in Hillsborough County, if we look at it from the whole, green leaf, actually lawn products, is the most valuable in the entire county.
You're talking about ornamental plants.
Yes,
for landscaping.
ornamentals. As we go on down the line, yes, fish is a very, very intense product. There's a lot of citrus. There's a tremendous amount of strawberry production, which probably is right in there near the top.
Mm-hmm.
There recently there's a lot of green leaf, row crop vegetables, this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd like to thank you for being on the show today, Dooley, and let us know if you have comments about today's shows. You can reach us on our hotline or on email as listed here. I'm Ray Shermonti on behalf of the Planning Commission. I thank you for thinking beyond today.